Awesome, man. So, yeah, let's kick this off. So, I do start with the same boring ass question every time. It's a simple introduction. Who are you? Little background on yourself.
Yeah, my name is Joseph Lazzari. I play guitar and sing in Reconciler, and I live in Atlanta, Georgia.
Awesome, man. So, for those that aren't familiar with the band, relatively new in the sense that you've got some time under your belt in this project, being from about 2016. But then
Hmm.
there was also like 2.5 years of fucking COVID that ruined everything. So, what's it
Yeah.
like? You guys were building this momentum, really trying to make a name, and then the world shuts down and puts you in this really weird spot. Your bad.
It's fucking depressing. Yeah, that's it's absolutely fucking depressing.
Yeah.
Um, we were supposed to tour Europe for the first time in 2020. Um, and like recently, I was going back through my Reverb.com purchases and remembered that I bought a flight case for my guitar at like March 17th, 2020. And
Oof.
uh and the seller was like, hope this case takes you to some great places.
And then 4 days later, the world was shut down.
Yeah, I thought about emailing him back through Reverb like now in 2024 and be like, hey, it's still in my closet upstairs, I haven't seen it since then, you know.
Yeah.
um but yeah, no, it's a little crazy, but like the playing field's kind of level because it was crazy for everybody, you know.
Right. Yeah.
um but yeah, it's strange. We've been a band for 7 years and we're just now finally about to release our second record. um but just
Yeah.
doing what we can do.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. That it's strange for everyone, and that it was strange for everyone, because that was, like, not that we want to make light about the situation at all. Like, the pandemic obviously was a very serious thing and all of that, but the one very minor silver lining when it comes to the music industry was that it affected everybody. So it leveled that playing field to who wants to do this, who's willing to put in the work, who's willing to write, who's willing to still pursue this. Or there were definitely some bands that used that time to reflect and went, maybe this isn't what I want to do.
100%. Yeah. um some bands that I really love called it quits during that time and like didn't get to play a farewell show or do a farewell tour. It was just that was it.
Yeah.
um and there's nothing really romantic about that, but it just is what it is. But you know in that sense, I think we're really fortunate that we did keep doing this and we did make another record. And through all the hoops we've had to jump through since, COVID is over, air
Right.
quotes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, as it's like maybe worse than it's ever been right now. But like, we did those things. And I feel extra proud of this record that we made because of that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the big things is being able to look at the art that you were able to produce through that time and go, maybe if things would have went differently, this would, not even maybe, almost 100% guarantee, right? The record wouldn't be the same record if the pandemic didn't happen.
Absolutely not. No. And like, I remember when we first started writing for this record, which is definitely in the midst of the pandemic, like I remember talking to my bandmates and being like, I don't want to make a COVID record. Like, everybody that writes songs and lyrics right now is writing how much it sucks to stay inside or whatever. And I was like, I
Yeah.
don't want to do that. But it was completely unavoidable. And like there were a couple songs on the record that I was like, all right, this is the COVID song. It is. And then like a little distance from that, and I was like, it wasn't so much a COVID song. It was like you know, intense life during that time song.
Yeah.
And it's like that's which is one thing for me. I feel like, I sit down to write a song about something that's sparked by an idea. I do that thing. I think I wrote a song about a thing. And then like a year later, I'm like, that song wasn't so much about what I thought it was about, just kind of
Yeah.
let it flow out. But yeah, no, I mean, this record is heavily informed by, the last few years for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think, to your point, like on the one hand, yes, it is a COVID song because it happened during that time. But I think the kind of interesting thing about the pandemic from a mental health standpoint is everybody got very introspective. Everybody had to sit with their thoughts and their demons and deal with stuff that maybe they wouldn't normally deal with. So kind of to your point there, I think while it may be a COVID song, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a song just about life and going through the hard times.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I think for me, I'm naturally an introspective, pretty heavy-hearted person, I think, but so I think I probably found a little camaraderie during that time period where kind of like everybody was doing that. I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
welcome to the club, brother,
Right, right. We've been sad boys over here. Come on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Because speaking for myself, I've dealt with mental health and depression as long as I can remember. And most of my friend group not on the same level with me. And then COVID
Totally.
happened and they had to sit through some of their thoughts and they're like, is this what you like normally go through? I'm like, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
normal day for me. Sorry.
Take my hand. I got you. Come on,
Right. Yeah. Let
let's
me
go
lead
this
this
way.
ship now. um, so let's dive into the new record, right? So you've
Sure.
got a new album called Art for Our Sake, going to be dropping early February via Smart Punk Records. Let's start with that. How dope is it to be with Smart Punk? I mean, talk about a label that just has a fucking roster and a name that everybody can respect.
Yeah, 100%. It's also being co-released by Gunner Records in Germany, which I
Mm-hmm.
should probably just throw in there real quick. But we love Smart Punk. We've known all of those guys for a really long time. Um, I've played shows with all of their bands, over the
Mm-hmm.
years and stuff. So when we found ourselves needing a label this year, that was our first choice. It was like, let's go to Smart Punk. And they were like,
Yeah.
come on over. And we were like, well, that was an open and shut case. It
Yeah.
was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think they're one of those bands, especially in this type of music scene. I hate fucking genre labels because they don't fit anybody. But in this
Yeah.
alternative, kind of post hardcore, kind of emo thing, right? In this, uh, we'll just call it non mainstream music space. Smart Punk has been around for so long and kind of dominating in that space under the radar, right? Like
Yeah.
people recognize Fearless Records, Hopeless, some of those guys, but they don't always recognize that Smart Punk was like pioneers in this space.
Absolutely. And I think a lot more people are going to start to recognize Smart Punk as a household name in that realm right now. I feel like they're definitely making some moves to take up more space in that. And one thing that I respect about all of those guys so much is they're working so hard to do the thing that they're doing. Like you don't see a punk festival in this country that doesn't have a Smart Punk tent set up and a Smart
Mm-hmm.
Punk banner. They're always just on it, on the grind, and it's admirable. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so diving into the record, like you said, you kind of wrote this through the pandemic, a little bit post pandemic as you're doing the mixing and production and things like that. Something I don't do is ask the specifics of any songs anymore because I don't want to ruin it for somebody that makes a connection. But let's talk about some of these because I got the advanced stream. I was able to listen to it on my way home from work today.
Sweet.
There's a lot of this really cool for people that are curious just sonically, like where you're at. It's hard to describe, but the band that kept coming to mind as I heard your voice and just some of the sonic space is like old school Alkaline Trio. You've got like this really cool, like gravelly punk feel, but also not so like misfits or something where you can't get into it if you're not of this genre.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate it. That's a high compliment. Thank you.
Yeah. So for you writing this album and putting, kind of your heart on the sleeve to some extent with some of these words, what was it like, or what's it like for you in this space where you're creating a piece of art that is so personal to you, but also at some point handing it over to the world to go, hey, this is how I feel about stuff. I
Yeah,
lost your. There he is. Okay, I lost you for a split second.
it's such a difficult thing, man. Like, okay. Sorry, the internet's probably a little spotty here.
Yeah,
It's
you're
probably
all
all on
good.
my end. So sorry
Yep,
about that.
all good. You're back now.
So every cool. I feel like every step of this process is super vulnerable and anxiety inducing for me. Like, normally when I write a song, I'll demo it in some fashion upstairs in my house, whether it's just like a voice memo of me playing acoustic guitar and singing into my phone, or like, with my little USB rig hooked up to my computer and actually tracking some electric guitars and, overdubbing vocals or
Mm-hmm.
whatever I do. But I do that thing, that's an idea, and I'll text that thing over to my bandmates. Like, here's a new one. What do you think? And if it goes like 4 hours with no reply, like that 4 hours, I'm fucking dying, dude.
Yeah.
And like, I hope Darren, who plays bass in Reconciler, I hope he listens to this episode and he hears this right now and he'll laugh. But like, I'm fucking dying, Darren. Reply to my text messages. Um, but like, so
How many are waiting right now?
there's almost none right now. Like, we rang the lemon pretty dry for this one. We recorded 16 songs during this batch. So,
Yeah, nice.
um, but so yeah, and then like you put like all of this effort and you kind of build this wave of pushing this thing toward the end of like pre-production if you're so lucky, which we were this time, and then going to the studio and doing the thing. And then it goes through mixing, bouncing that back and forth of like, do these mixes work? Let's change. What's this sound? What's that sound? Let's do that. And every step, it's just like it's moving and moving and moving. And then we approve mixes, masters come back, everything sounds great. We send it off, and then I just sit here and stew about it for like 6 months. I'm
Yeah.
like, is this the best record I've ever made? Is it going to be really cool? Are people going to love it? Is this the worst shit that's ever happened? Are people going to hate it? Like, is it going to get like 4 listens and people are going to be like, that was dog shit? And like, your brain can just run away with you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like, so there's a little bit of a weird like empty nest syndrome with finishing up a record, sending it off, and then all the stuff that has to happen there. So right now, I feel like I'm starting to get a little bit back to normal with like singles coming out, talking about it a little bit. People are like texting me like, "Hey, heard that single, dug it, or hated it, or whatever." So yeah, that's
Yeah.
it's kind of that.
Yeah, which is awesome to hear in the sense that I think that's the unspoken thing, right? Like the
Yeah,
corporate answer from a lot of artists is normally the, oh no, it's really cathartic and this, and everything's easy, and it's like, no, it's fucking not. Don't lie to me. Like there's no way
yeah,
it's easy.
and you have to pretend like it's such a fluid thing. Like you just write it and you go into the record. You go into the
Right.
recording studio, you record it, and then it just flies out to the world. It's like, no, dude, it does. It
Yeah.
doesn't like, and it doesn't
And
for anybody. I don't think. Maybe
no,
it does.
and it's probably such a minute number of people that it does. You know what I mean? Like maybe Eminem walks into the booth and just lays it down and is done, but
Yeah,
very few people. But I think too, it goes to like on that anxiety side of things, right? Like you send it off for mixing and mastering, and it's like, should I have used this to rhyme instead of this? Like, could I have changed this hook? Which one would be grabbier? Like, fuck, what am I doing?
you know, I try to let those little things just be the fuel for the next thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like like if I think of a better idea for something that's set in stone, like if I think of a better idea for that, that just means that I learned something from that song. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm never going to make a perfect song, but I learned something to carry on to the next one. So like try not to stress out too much about like, I should have used a different word, or like if I would have played that E chord as like, higher up on the neck or low, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like, it is what it is.
Yeah. But I think too, anytime you're creating a very personal piece of art like this, um, there's also, you kind of alluded to it, a bit of imposter syndrome too, right? Like now that it's created and it's going to go out in the world, that is this good enough? Am I good enough? Are people going to care? Starts coming up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I think making art any kind, it's all the same energy. It's putting it out there in the same way. But like, you know, for me, those things, they only need to exist if you're trying to start a dialogue with another person or another group of people.
Yeah.
It's like, otherwise, like, why do it? So that's that's where the nerves come in. Is like, is it going to connect with people? Because like, I'm just doing this because like, obviously I'm not great at connecting with people in this life, and I'm trying to figure that shit out. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think I have this podcast, right? Like
sure, yeah.
it is. It's something, there's something inherent with um this introspective society that some of us exist in, where our outlets have to be in these kind of odd, quote unquote, odd situations, being a musician, being an artist of some sort, a creative of some sort. And I think it's because so often, uh, let's get a little bit deep here, I guess, but like so often through like childhood or whatever, like maybe we didn't have a big network of friends, we didn't connect with people, whatever it is. So then our outlet is almost an overcorrection, right? I don't want to connect with the 10 people around me. I want to connect with 100,000 people across the world.
Sure, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Um, so for you, as you wrote this album, um, let's dive into a few of them, because I do think, even if we're not going to start diving into like the specifics of the songs about, my dog getting hit by a car or whatever, I think it is important to talk about just kind of like the song craft, right?
Hmm.
So let's start with the title track, Art for Our Sake. Talk a little bit about the concept of it, and just kind of the way that you guys start crafting the soundscape and the delivery for what your style is.
A lot of our songs are collaborative these days, at least musically. That one, I feel like I just kind of handed that one in pretty finished up. Um, and so so yeah, it kind of goes back and forth. We can start with riffs and stuff, but that's a song that like I had this idea for it probably like, I don't know, 2 3 years ago, and that song literally took me 2 years to write. Some of the other ones I wrote, in 25 minutes while drinking my coffee. It
Yeah.
just took a long time because I was like, was trying to write this manifesto for like how to live well as an artist, how to like find some happiness in that
Mm-hmm.
existence. And I feel like every time I set out to do something like that, like I'm going to write this kind of positive anthem for that thing or an act or a feeling or whatever it is, like I get distracted halfway through, and I have to be honest about all the pitfalls of that shit. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, that song is sort of a manifesto about being an artist. Um, but it's also an admission of like, if you're really going to try to live that life, make money from making art, like you're going to be cutting off one hand to fill the other one. And it's
Yeah.
almost impossible. I mean, it's like, it's very difficult. So that's
Yeah.
like, that's, that became like this weird struggle song, and like, because my day job is being an artist. Like I play in this band, but like my day job is being an artist. And it's like something I contend with all the time of like, how do I live authentically and be honest to my like creative spirit,
Right.
and still not literally starve to death. So it's like that's what
Yeah.
that song is about. Yeah.
And I thought too, like for me, when I was listening to it, it reminded me of Rick Rubin quote that I just saw that I'm going to have to paraphrase. But basically, it was that the listener comes last, right? So when it comes to music,
Yeah.
the listener's opinion, this is going to sound really shitty to some people, but I think it out of context, it'll sound shitty. In context, it'll make sense. The listener is the last person that matters on how they feel about a song, for the fact that if it's going to connect with them, it's going to connect with them. But if I'm writing disingenuous music, then I'm not doing myself justice to make my art.
Or anyone else for that matter.
Yeah.
Like, I think that quote is probably from his book, The Creative Act.
Yes.
Um, and it blew me away. I read that book twice. It's incredible. But yeah, and honestly, it's kind of funny that you brought that quote up, because I actually flipped back through it recently and had highlighted some passages, and that was one of
Yeah.
them that I had highlighted. It's like, because it is a thing I struggle with, of like, are people going to connect with this stuff? Are like, does it matter that I'm doing this at all? And it's, I don't know, just a really excellent point that he made of like, if you do it for yourself and you're just actually honest about what you're trying to do, you don't have to worry about will people connect with it, because people will connect with it. Like, as human beings, we're not all that different from one another.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the misconception, and that's one of the things I love about doing music journalism is I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, and when I started um back in 2003-ish, um there was still very much a disconnect even between quote unquote entry level rock stars and the crowd, right? Like the internet didn't really exist all that well, so people weren't accessible. There was this disconnect on, oh, they're on stage, so they're better than me, they're different than me, whatever. And through music journalism, um it really opened my eyes to, like, it's funny because I have friends that are always, don't you get nervous talking to these artists and shit? And I'm like, no, they're fucking people. That's what you guys are forgetting. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, everybody I talk to is just a fucking human being that happens to be good at something. Like, it doesn't matter to me if it's, no offense to you, Justin Bieber, whoever, right? Like, at the end of the day, you're a fucking human being. So why would I be nervous about talking to another human being and hearing their point of view or their, you know,
Yeah.
their art?
I would imagine that probably 100% of the musicians that you talk to are probably more nervous to be talking to you than you are to them.
I hope that's not the case. I try to be pretty laid back, but I do get what you're saying, like, because you're putting your image out there, right? And it's,
Yeah.
will these things get clipped out of context? If I said, not that I have a bad thing to say about Rick Rubin, but if I make a comment about Rick Rubin and that's the only piece that somebody takes is, oh, he said fuck Rick Rubin. No, he didn't listen to the whole quote or the whole story.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the album here. Um let's go into, so Art for Our Sake, obviously the title track. Um and I think the next one that like really grabbed me, again, as I'm driving, so for what it's worth, pulling me out of paying attention to other motherfuckers on the road, uh was the 38 regular, Out of This Grave. I don't even know what it was. Just as soon as that song kicks in, my attention immediately went to my phone to see like which track that is and everything. Talk a little bit about, again, building this soundscape and kind of the placement of it, because I think where it falls on the album is really important too, right?
Yeah. 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 Well, that was the first song that we wrote for this record. And for a while, I think we considered it to be an opening track. Um, but just like didn't really tell the story that I think it needed to. And like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh like I was mentioning earlier about a couple of them being like, well, that's the COVID song. This is definitely,
Yeah.
that for sure. Um, but there's an arc in this record that like kind of begins with some naive optimism in the opening track, and then like cynicism really kicks in quick in the rest of side A.
Yeah.
And it almost, side A kind of ends with sort of a death in a way, of
Yeah.
like a death of like a former way of living, a death of a former way of thinking. And 38 regular became track 1 side B because it just feels like this kind of waking up again,
Mm-hmm.
kind of feeling. Uh, and it's called 38 regular because that's actually, that intro riff is actually a riff that Darren, our bass player, wrote. And he brought it in, and he didn't uh, he didn't make any connections that that riff sounds like almost like a 38 special song that doesn't exist.
Right.
And so the joke title of it became 38 regular, like it's not as good as 38 special.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was like, this is not going to be fucking called this when the record comes out, And
Yeah.
then by the time the record came out, I was like, I can't change the name of this song.
Right.
It's just 38 regular. It sounds like a kind of small suit size now.
Yeah. But I think it's funny when you have those types of stories too, because it's like, A, there's the inside joke, but B, now that that inside joke is out there for everyone, it's going to be one of those things that everybody pays attention to. Like, now I have to go listen to that song, and then I'm going to
Yeah,
go play 38 special, and then I'm going to come back to that song and be like, okay, yep,
yeah.
that's what it
I hope
was.
their 38 specials lawyers aren't listening to this particular episode.
Eh,
No, nah, it's
I
not.
feel like that's on me,
We
not
really,
you.
nah, we checked it. I was like, nah, it's good. It's not
Yeah,
that close.
yeah. Just ask Vanilla Ice. You only have to change one note in the tuning, right? Like, it'll be fine. Um, so, like you said, kind of side B of this album, if you will, as you go into the tail end of it, um, kind of brings around this almost a renewed sense of optimism, right? So, like,
Yeah,
you start off kind of like you said, like this naive optimism, realize, this isn't how life works. The cynicism pulls in and everything, and then this rebirth of optimism and kind of a just a whole new perspective, right? It's almost like taking off the rose colored glasses, seeing the world for what it is, and going, okay, but I'm not going to let it kill me. Like, I'm going to move forward through this.
yeah, man, absolutely. Um, that's you know, if there's anything that I could hope that a listener would get from that record as a whole, it's that journey. And you know, that's the concept of that record, is like it really ends where it begins again, but just with some more wisdom about the world. And
Yeah.
like just that idea of this like concentric circle spinning around playing music, and there's no real ending or beginning to it. We just keep going through these phases in our life. Um, we might think that we made it to like where we need to be, and then you just realize there's a whole new set of pitfalls, and you just got to keep working at it and keep going.
Yeah.
Um, so that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, which I think kind of plays into the never fade away, right? So you kind of have that transition to this new perspective, new, line of thinking, mode of thinking, and then never fade away hits you. And it's kind of this, for me, it was kind of this like almost like a memory, right? Like, remember these things because they never fade away. But to your point, like, those are the experiences that are going to help you get through the next stages of whatever you're dealing with.
Sure. And I think it's also like you know, the hope there is that there's a refusal to give up no matter what,
Right.
no matter how bad it gets. Like, no matter how hard it is to live well, to be happy in this country that we live in this world that we live in, like
Yeah.
no matter how bad it gets, it's like, what's what's the point of not, like, you know, there's no good way out. So
Right.
like, we might as well just be as much of a thorn in the side of all these people that are calling the shots as possible. You know what I mean? Like, even if they're going to win every time, just let's not make it easy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's going to sound so fucking cheesy, but I just watched Van Wilder again the other day. And it's kind of that it's kind of that quote that he uses where it's, you can't take life too seriously because you'll never make it out alive, right? Like the
Yeah,
end of everybody's life is still death. So like why give up partway through that and die before you've ever died?
absolutely. Or like, you know, and whatever that death means, it's like, why stop learning? Why stop trying? You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people would just get complacent, I think. And like, especially when you get like in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or whatever, it's like you stop like trying to find new things that excite you and stuff, like
Yeah.
it's like just there's no point of falling into that rut. There's nothing good to be found in there. Just like, you know,
And
like
that's coming from us guys that live in that rut, right? Like we've been here. We know there's nothing good there.
I try to keep a couple of claws right out of the top of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, I do. I think it's one of those things where, to your point, a lot of people, and I've seen it in my own like friends and family over the years, they get complacent, they get comfortable or whatever it is, and it, not that saying that you need to be like reckless by any means, but don't stop experiencing new things because you're scared that it may mess something else up. Like
Yeah,
maybe it's going to make everything better, maybe going for that promotion or leaving the company you're with, whatever, is going to open that door to moving to your dream state or, better work life balance, whatever it is. But if you just sit in that complacency of, I know everything I need to know, I'm getting my paycheck the way I'm getting my paycheck, like everything's good, then what are you doing? Like, are you okay
yeah,
with just sitting there forever?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about the ending track. What's in a goodbye anyway?
Um, so that song is like, I kind of had this idea for this song that would definitely bring back that optimism from
Mm-hmm.
the first track. And I wrote this song as like a last track.
Yeah.
Um, it was intentional, but like the idea was like so what if we get to the end of our lives, of this existence, whatever that thing might be, and like we figure out that it turns out so much cooler than we ever thought it could have. you know
Yeah.
let's just fucking kid around for a second that just over that hill there might be something that's so much more amazing than we ever dreamed of. And like, I'm not necessarily like talking about like a religious or spiritual existence
Right.
or whatever. It's just like whatever that hill might be. It's just like, you know, just keep this idea that there might be something so much cooler than we ever thought there could be, just right up there. And that's kind of like the theme of the song. Like technically, uh, I kind of like tried to write that song like Alanis Morissette's "Ironic,"
Mm-hmm.
um, and like most of the lyrics and the verses are just like statements about what a goodbye could be.
Right.
um, because like, if there's this idea that things are cyclical and they never, like, time is not linear, like everything is
Yeah.
in perpetual motion and stuff like that, then there's no such thing as a goodbye. There's no real like, there's no hard stop on the end of this thing for
Yeah.
any of us. um so like, just like, okay, if that's the case, then what can this thing be? What purpose can that idea serve?
Yeah.
um yeah, that's it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really kind of beautiful way to look at it too. Whether you're religious, spiritual, whatever, like the end of whatever this life is very likely is not truly a, like you said, a hard stop. Like matter, energy, however deep you want to get with it, like just repeats itself. Are you going
Yeah.
to have consciousness and be the same person again? No, life, well, who knows, right? Life may be a simulation. We don't fucking know.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
conceptually, no, you're not going to be the same person, but you know, there is also some sort of weird, you know, timeline, if you will, the multiverse of timelines where like what you're
Yeah.
going through now is altering what you go through in this other life or whatever. There's ridiculous theories about like deja vu being the crossover of some of those timelines and things like that. And it's this really weird kind of existential moment that you're
I
having.
love
Yeah. Did I
getting
lose you
into
again?
that stuff, man.
Oh, dude, it's so
Yeah,
good. It's so good. Like it 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 does spiral into
absolutely.
some
Yeah, I think I'm
existentialism, but like at the same time, when you start opening your mind to that possibility that what I do now maybe affects a better version of me or stops a worse version of me, a more depressed version of me, whatever, like it's this really cool and empowering moment. And I think to your point with that song, like what's in a goodbye? Who knows, right? Like maybe we're all fucking wrong and
yeah.
there truly is a hard stop and a goodbye is a goodbye. But the optimism, to your point of like trying to resurge some of that optimism, is there's not a hard stop. So a goodbye is not a farewell, it's not a finale. It's a this chapter may be closing, but something else is opening up.
Yeah, definitely. And like I I love thinking about and like reading about deja vu stuff and
Mm-hmm.
like parallel existences and stuff like that, you know. And I always like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get super crazy into it, but I definitely entertain myself on almost a daily basis thinking about like, you know, having weird feelings that feels like, oh, maybe I just brushed a little close to like the me that's right next to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's just, I don't know, it's fun stuff to think about.
Yeah, it really is. And for anyone out there that's listening, like I highly recommend doing a little research on some of the theories around deja vu and stuff like that, because it is this really cool like concept about how our minds, our bodies, whatever, our energy is so much more powerful than we can even begin to comprehend. And some of that's that bleed over of, like you said, kind of, oh, I brushed too close to this other vibration of me and I
Hmm.
siphoned off some of that. And it's just this really, really cool thing. I personally, for me, like reading into some of that, um, has really helped with the depression side of stuff, where it's like, I've dealt with mental health my whole life, but then I have those moments of deja vu or whatever, and it opens my mind to like, it's okay that I'm struggling now because it doesn't always have to be that way. There's other things out there, and I'll catch glimpses of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So for you guys, the record's going to be dropping. Like we said earlier, technically COVID is over, even though it's probably as bad as it's ever been.
Yeah.
But live music is back. So for 2024, what's kind of your vision, your hope for what you guys are able to do off this record?
Um, we we're booking a couple album release shows that are kind of special things where like at least the one in Atlanta that's coming up, we're gonna play the record in its entirety. Which is like you get one time to do that, I think, and then
Yeah.
everybody's like, all right, enough of that. You just, you know, they came to see the hits or whatever. Not that we
Right.
have any, but um, we are we'll be announcing super soon a run that we're doing to Europe and the UK with our buddies New Junk City. That'll be happening this spring, and then yeah, as soon as it starts to warm up a little bit, we're gonna hit as many places as we can. Um, all of us have a lot of other obligations in life these days, so like it's gonna be little spurts and stops of 2, 3, 4, 5 show runs here and there, but
Yeah.
we're gonna try to get everywhere we can. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, some people hate that, but they also are the same people that are like detached from reality, right? Like if it was a 18-year-old kid, sure, maybe they can just fuck off for 6 months and just go straight tour. But like as we get older, to your point, like there's real jobs involved, there's significant others, there's children, there's a
Yeah.
variety of things that we as human beings in this super capitalistic world that we live in have to take care of in order to do these other things. So, but I think, the flip
For
side of
sure.
that too is for you guys doing 5 to 7 day runs, whatever, gives you time to kind of recharge in between runs of the tours. But also it allows you to be like hyper specific, right? And know that you're going to a
Yeah.
city and let the people know that, hey, I'm coming to your city because we've chosen to come to your city. We're not just shotgunning against the wall. Like we've chosen to come here.
Yeah. Which I mean, in some ways increases the pressure a little bit,
Yeah.
because we don't have like a 27 show run where it's like, all right, those first three weren't great, but like, you know, but the main thing that sucks about doing short runs is like the first three shows pretty much always suck, in
Yeah.
my opinion. Not crowd wise, venue wise, nothing like that. But like as far as the band being dialed in, like
Mm-hmm.
you just you suck. No matter how much you practice. Like you can get in the practice space and we can jam that stuff nonstop and be like as tight as can be. And then you get on stage and there's all these weird anomalies because we don't travel with our own sound guy. There's gonna be a
Yep.
different sound guy every night. Monitors are gonna be weird, and it's like so you gotta like, I don't know, the repetition of doing more shows gets everybody on the same wavelength. So like even if everything is going wrong up there, you're still doing all right. But if
Yeah.
like, if everything's going wrong up there and you're just like fresh, like, oh, we all just worked all week and now we're gonna play this show, like it ain't gonna go that well. And like, maybe a lot of people don't notice, I overthink all this stuff and I
Right.
hyperfixate on it, you know what I mean? But yeah, so in that regard, I wish we could do longer runs where it just becomes second nature. You stop thinking about what you're doing up there and you just get to like really enjoy the show rather than hanging on for dear life. But like,
Yeah.
we do what we can do.
Well, and I think it's funny because bands always talk about, oh, we've been in the rehearsal space, we've done this, we've done that to prep for tours, and it's like, don't get me wrong, that's obviously great, but how often when you're set up in your practice space do you break down your gear and replug it in to make sure that everything that you did it in the right sequence and stuff like that? Because when you're loading in at a venue, fuck, we didn't put the board in line in the right place or something like that causes an issue. There's all these little things that it's like,
Yeah,
oh shit, like we never thought that that could be a problem.
we're pretty militant about our
Yeah.
process. uh, Everything goes in the same place in the road cases, and those road cases go in the same configuration in and out of the van and in the practice space every time. Um, but yeah, that being said, certain shows we can't play our normal rigs. We have to use different stuff. And like we were playing Fest this year, we were playing a set that we were very excited about playing. And like we played right before Sam I Am, which are some heroes,
Yeah.
those they were rad. Uh, and since we're a trio, I play out of two guitar amps, and I can normally only hear one of them unless the sound guy is really good because the other amp is on the other side of the stage. And like we do that so like there's not this weird dichotomy of only guitars here,
Yeah.
only bass here. Kind of blends everything. But I normally can't hear that amp. And the head that was powering that cabinet over there was one that I'd never used before. And before we left, I put spike tape on the top of it to make sure all the knobs were just like they were supposed to be. And there was one little toggle switch on the front that I didn't mark, that I didn't pay attention to. And it was flipped down when it should have been flipped up. That sound was dog shit on that side of the stage. And I
Yeah.
started seeing videos the next day and I was like, what the fuck? But, but, what can you do? You can do nothing, it's like
Yeah.
shit happens. And
Yeah.
had we already done, you know, 6, 7, 10 shows on that run with that rig, it would have happened maybe the first night, maybe the second night, but it wouldn't have happened that night. You know what I mean?
Right.
But just is what it is.
Yeah. No, I think that's a cool thing that probably goes unnoticed too is, being a trio, like you said, having that second setup off on the other side, like from a listener standpoint, for the fans that or listeners maybe that don't understand what that does crowd wise, it essentially turns it back into stereo music instead of mono.
Yeah.
Hearing guitar in your left ear, bass in your right, and then your brain tries to mix it versus hearing it all together and going, oh,
Hmm.
cool, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So um I like to do these shitty cards because I refuse to think of better questions as I end episodes. So I bought this game called Hot Takes, and it's
All
just
right.
like funny opinions and shit like that. So we can agree, disagree, expand on some of them, whatever it is.
Okay.
So the first one, kind of funny since we just talked about life responsibilities. Men should get just as long on parental leave as women.
Well, we should probably start with like women actually getting some leave there. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. That would be
like,
fair too. Yes.
yeah. Are we in Germany right now? Are we in Finland right now?
I
Because
was
if
going to say
so, then
Germany takes
sure.
care of their people. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think both parents in Finland get like a year paid.
Yeah.
In our country,
And a
uh,
secured position. If I'm not
yes.
mistaken, like your job is secure, they can't
Yeah, for
replace
sure.
you, all that.
Yeah. Uh, do I think we should get, paternal leave in this country? Absolutely, but we should probably focus on the maternal leave first. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a fair assessment. I think you're right. If we were giving real maternal leave in the same fashion as some of those countries, then we could have that discussion that father should be there as well. But the
Yeah,
fact that
for
it's
sure.
like, hey, after you get done pushing out that kid, if you could be back on like Thursday, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's it's something. I don't know if incredible is the right thing, but
I meant in a bad
um
way.
right, yeah. Yeah. This one I don't think is that big of a hot take, but NFTs are a waste of money.
Fuck yes, they are.
Right?
I mean, as a visual artist, like, every outlet that reports on art was like obsessed for a minute. And then like after a few months, you started to be able to see the veil getting pulled back a little bit. And it was like, okay, a lot of these outlets are actually helping to push this stuff so that there's like
Right.
a short term cash grab here for, it's a fucking pyramid scheme, and like,
But
hey, maybe a couple legitimate creators, made some cool things and got some benefits, but by and large, it's a fucking scam.
yeah, that's my thing is like, so it's I'm trying to think of the way I want to word that. So you're essentially buying digital artwork, which sounds great in one sense, but like that means that you don't truly own it, right? Like, okay, if I buy a Banksy piece of work, it's the only one in the fucking world. I own that thing.
Yeah.
But as
It
a NFT, they could just be like, oh well, you just got edition one. Here's the other 43 that we're releasing as edition two.
Well, I feel like it's worse than that. I feel like, so it's digital art, so it's infinitely reproducible
Mm-hmm.
and almost open source at that point. But they just invented a rule saying you are the only person that actually owns it, even though a billion other people can just screen grab it or whatever they want to do to keep it and probably have it in the same quality,
Right.
visually, you know, but instead they made up a fake rule saying you're the only person to own it. And guess what? Now it has a huge fucking carbon footprint for some reason. So
Yeah.
like, like, yeah, you own that weird sad face, with ice cream on top of its head or whatever, and now you're killing the ozone layer by
Yeah.
owning it. So that's cool.
Yeah. It's so weird. And it kind of goes into, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but it goes into digital currency as well, right? Like Bitcoin, stuff like that. Like, okay, cool. Conceptually, that's a really great idea. However, there has to be true monetary value behind it as well, because what's the value in it if I just, perfect examples, the whatever it was, Shiba coin or whatever, that fucking Elon Musk, or Dogecoin, when he,
Yeah.
hey, this is worth X number of dollars. No, the fuck it's not. It's a piece of a piece of a piece of a piece of information that means nothing to anybody. There's no real value in it.
It's pretty similar to the US dollar, you're saying.
But yeah, almost exactly, just again in a digital format. So um the last one that we're going to do, I think we
Yeah.
kind of touched on it. Time is a construct.
Uh,
That's the
yeah,
whole thing.
but
I
it's a
think it is.
complicated one.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a whole rabbit hole that you can go down. I think it's really interesting. It hurt my head. I'm sure you've seen Hank Green on TikTok, right? So
I haven't actually.
you should look him up. He does just these ridiculous videos, and he'll send you spiraling down rabbit holes. But he was
Cool.
talking about like, so essentially the way that we know that the Big Bang happened and all that is we've looked back at the universe, and if we look in this direction, blah blah blah, right? And the problem is when he starts explaining it, he's like, this is where your head's going to explode, is we can look backwards in time but not forwards in time. But no matter what direction we look in space, we're looking backwards in time. So there's no, you know what I mean? He's like, all this shit is expanding in every single possible direction, but they all lead back to the exact same point as well.
Yeah,
And like, it
totally.
cannot, yeah.
And like I love to think about that stuff, and like I love to entertain that idea of like time isn't even real, man. But then it's
Right.
like you work a 70-hour week and wake up at 6
Yeah.
a.m. again and again and again, and you're like, time is fucking real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's killing me.
Yes.
Like
The
so
corporate world is Groundhog's Day. Like,
yeah.
it's
Yeah. So
brutal.
it's a wild thing to really dive into.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of the traditional outro that I do. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. I think that this album is hands down going to be one of those albums this year, especially from the smart punk roster, that is like, look at what we're doing, because A, it matters, and B, we're having trouble existing as well, and you're going to relate to this shit. So like, here's
Thanks. Thanks so
you know,
much.
yeah, here's a piece of artwork to help you cope with what you're coping with. But no, my traditional outro, take all the time you need, promote whatever you want to promote. Obviously, I'll link all your socials and stuff, but where can people find you? What's the best way to interact with you guys? Things like that.
Yeah. So the record comes out on February 2nd, which is very soon. We have another single, the third and final single, I think comes out on the 11th of this month. So in a couple more days, there'll be another single to listen to out there. February 2nd, the record comes out. There's 4 different variants of this record that you can find. One of them is a Gunner Records exclusive to the EU. We have an exclusive variant through our Bandcamp, and Smart Punk Records has an exclusive variant through their web store as well. And they also started a Smart Punk record club for the first time this year.
Mm-hmm.
And every record that comes out this year will have an exclusive variant for the club that only people who join the club up front will get. The variant that they made for our club edition is a super cool one too.
Yeah.
So if you're a person like me that likes different variants of records and stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff to choose from and a lot of different ways to get it. But the biggest hope is that just people listen to it. It's everywhere that you listen to music. It'll be there on February 2nd. And then we have a show February 9th in Atlanta. That's our album release. If you're anywhere around there, especially in Atlanta, please come to that show. But yeah, we're mainly active on Instagram. That's
Yeah,
if you
pretty
want
common.
to if you want to talk to us, we're there.
Awesome. That show on the 9th in Atlanta, what venue for people?
It's our favorite venue in the city. It's called the Earl. The Earl. It's best small club in the city, probably the southeast, one of the best in the country. It's amazing. We love that place. Our friends, $500 from Philly, are coming down to play with us. There's going to be some stand-up comedy involved, some like an all vinyl DJ set happening. Lots of craziness. It'll be fun.
Awesome. Sounds like a great time.
Yeah,
That's everything I've got for you, Joe. I really, like I said, I appreciate it. I think this album is an incredible introspective coping mechanism, and that's coming from a fellow depressed human being. So really like what you've done, and can really appreciate and kind of admire, that you're so willing to put yourself out there in this fashion, and unabashedly, say this is what we go through, this is life. It's not always pretty, it's
yeah,
often messy. So
man. I can't thank you enough for putting the time in to listen to the record and think about it, and really really have some really valid points to talk about. I really enjoyed talking to you about it. Just thanks for talking to me. I've really
yeah,
had a blast hanging out with you for the last hour, man.
yeah, awesome, man. I appreciate it. I'll keep you posted on when this goes live and everything. But yeah, when you start making those tour runs, if you get up to the Indiana area, Chicago, something like that, I'll definitely be out.
That sounds great. I look forward to it.
Awesome. Talk to you soon, man.
All right. Take care.
See ya.
See ya.